I want to play this sound from President Biden on the economy. We brought in Harry Hutchison, too, our director of policy here at the ACLJ. Let's hear from President Biden on the economy in these final days of his administration.
Next month, my administration will end and a new administration will begin. Most economists agree the new administration is going to inherit a fairly strong economy, at least at the moment. An economy going through fundamental transformation that's laid out a stronger foundation and a sustainable, broad-based, highly productive growth. And it's my profound hope that the new administration will preserve and build on this progress.
I mean, Harry, since Joe Biden's been in office, inflation has gone up. It's continued to go up. I think it went up again, 2.7% in November as people are trying to prepare, for the Christmas holidays. We know that wages are lagging way behind inflation. And while there were some moments in the Biden economy because of what the government decided to put into the economy, putting us more into debt, the only big positives that we've seen, certainly for people's 401ks and more looking to the future, is that when it was clear President Trump would be the next president of the United States and there were going to be economic policy changes that he did even out of his first term and may even go further his second term. And so you saw the markets react continually very favorably to that. And looking at cutting out some of the government waste, markets look favorable at that. So the real benefit that we've seen so far has just been the Trump election benefit. It's not the Trump in office benefit. It's just he got elected and people are more excited about where the economy could go.
I think you're precisely correct. And so I think the American people believe that there is now going to be an adult in the White House, someone who understands economics, someone who understands that the cost of living in the United States has been eating alive many Americans. Keep in mind that the latest report with respect to inflation shows that core inflation has risen at 3.3%, and that is an extremely high rate vis-a-vis individuals' income. So the real question for the American people is whether or not inflation is still rising at a more rapid rate than their income. And that, I think, is unfortunately the answer. But many Americans believe that with Donald Trump's ascendancy to the presidency, we will restore some fiscal restraint. The economy will begin to grow at a faster rate than the rate of inflation. And I think that's good news for the American people. At the end of the day, they recognize that Joe Biden did not understand economics, and they understood that Kamala Harris understood the economy even worse.
Well, and Professor Hutchison, even when you look at the proposals of the incoming Trump administration, things like the Department of the Government Efficiency and ways to rein in government spending, which has led to a lot of inflation as well under the Biden administration, I think there's that side as well you have to look at. When he says these positive moves that they've done a lot of wasteful spending. You've seen the Department of Defense fail 7 audits in a row, other government agencies as well, unable to really account for where their spending fully went. I think that even that in and of itself, if President Biden is wanting that trend to continue, fortunately for the American people, that isn't the agenda item, nor the mandate that was given to President Trump in that resounding victory.
I think that's precisely correct. And one thing that DOGE will focus on is the fact that only 6% of government workers actually show up for work on a regular basis. And most of those individuals that show up for work on a regular basis are security personnel. Or janitorial personnel. And so one of the ways of cutting waste, fraud, and abuse is first ensuring that government workers show up. And if they can't show up, then perhaps they should not be employed. The other proposal that DOGE has made is to move offices, government offices, closer to where the people live. So, for instance, perhaps move the agricultural department to Iowa or Nebraska, move the transportation department to Detroit or Ohio. All of those things, I think, would be helpful in encouraging excess workers to perhaps change their career. The other possibility, of course, is to cut the number of government contractors. And I can speak from experience. I have worked as a government contractor. I did brilliant work, but most of it wound up in the waste bin. Why? Because they couldn't decide what they wanted at the outset. And so, of course, they paid me. Of course, I gave a presentation. And of course, at the end of the day, it was utterly worthless.
I think Professor Hutchison just admitted to being a part of the deep state on the broadcast as a government contractor, but we'll let it slide. You do good work here as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think ultimately, when it comes to these issues of the economy and issues of inflation, I mean, there's two issues at play. People love to see the stock market go up because you feel better about the economy, and that means big companies and investors are feeling better about the companies. But also, we talked to Professor Hutchison and Harry, when we talked to you about inflation, that's what's killing Americans. They may see that's great that my 401k is going up. It better go up because if inflation stays like this, it needs to, so I can retire at some point in my life and maybe have enough to retire on for a few years, because people were looking and saying, not at this rate. What moves can be taken quickly by President Trump to get this inflation down?
Well, first and foremost, let's focus on energy independence. If you increase energy independence, this will have a knock-on effect on virtually every avenue of American life. So energy costs go into everything from medical care to medical products, the food, you name it. So one of the things we need to focus on is energy independence. In addition, we need to focus on reining in our international spending, including foreign aid, the amount of money that we're shipping to Ukraine. President Biden just announced that he's sending another perhaps $20 billion to Ukraine. Why aren't those funds being spent in the United States? Why aren't those funds being used to increase employment in the United States? To improve perhaps government productivity. So there are lots of things that we can do, and I think President Trump is going to hit the ground running. One of the advantages that he has with respect to this particular term versus his first term in 2016 is that he has experience. He recognizes that there will be opposition and obstacles, and he's trying to do a fantastic job in terms of appointing nominees to head cabinet offices and other offices that are going to be very, very important going forward.
Well, I mean, I know we've talked about two of the cases as well, this idea of the Donald Trump, the Alabama rule cases as well.
That's right. Yeah. So I want to get your take on this, Professor Hutchison. This filing in the motion to dismiss by Alvin Bragg, the DA in New York, trying to push this novel Alabama rule on Judge Merchan when New York actually does the opposite in their cases when a defendant dies before the appeals process is played out. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts are, number one, Alvin Bragg might make a very interesting and even brilliant law professor, but he is not equipped to ensure that justice is done. So what he has offered is a breathtakingly bizarre plan to keep the Trump campaign finance conviction alive and well during Trump's presidency. Why does he want to do this? Because he wants to impeach Donald Trump in the court of public opinion. So he wants to keep this abatement by death concept, which he has pulled from the files of Alabama, and he's trying to introduce them into New York, even though there is absolutely zero precedent in New York for accepting this particular rule. And I think Judge Merchan should reject it, and if not, Donald Trump and his legal team should make sure they appeal this approach.